So for the past week and a half, Dan has been trickling out these card changes, building up to him sending off the final card images and text to, well, really the images, to the printing company to get that process started for the release next year. And while some of these changes are still coming out up until this point, I thought it'd be fun to record a video just kind of going over them, discussing what I think about them. I think most of these are good. And I just think it's a fun kind of bridge video as I wait to get confirmation of the finalized cards and then upload it onto the website before making my base set review. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump right into it. Oh wait, it's on me. I should transition over to the Discord here where we've got the entire change log. So I'm just going to go down this list. Some of them I will skip because there has been further updates, but Titanostock is not one of them. So the change here is that it is now a 1 attack 4 defense Elestral, and you can expend 1 Earth in order to force an opponent to reveal their hand until the end phase. So this is notably different than the original Titanostock, which I'll have up on screen right here. You can pause and read it. But pretty much this one just kind of brings down the power level. Some of you, I know that other YouTubers have covered the Titanostock topic. It's been covered on the Steel and Spirits podcast. So just to kind of summarize everything that's been said for those of you who don't know, being able to look at your opponent's hand is really powerful. Just think about it this way. Trading card games are really you trying to make the best play that you can with the information you have available to you, and you won't always do that because you have incomplete information. Titanostock gives you complete information. So while at lower levels of play, this might not seem that great. It's like, oh, what does it matter if I know what's in my opponent's hand? In high level play, it really matters because once you get up to competitive play, all successful players will have a good idea of what the opponent's deck does based on the cards that they see and will be able to make much better plays. Pretty much if a Titanostock, especially on turn 1, gets played with its old effect, a good player would be able to see a huge spike in their win rate just by knowing that information, be able to make better choices. So that's why this card is insane, and I think this change is really great because now it limits the amount of information you get, because with the old Titanostock, your opponent would have to deal with it before they really get any more private information. So that means that you would see their draw. You would see whatever runes they set, unless they destroyed it with a card effect. But most of the time, they just have to attack over it during their combat phase, and that's a huge slowdown in tempo for them just to try to play around not giving you some information. And that's really big. So just being able to now have the effect changed to where you just kind of get a snapshot of the hand then, and it actually has a cost associated with it, I think is a really good change because there should be a cost associated with that sort of information. And now it's just not as oppressive since it's just a snapshot and no additional information in following turns. And because this is definitely a substantial nerf to the card, I do think bumping up to 4 defense is very nice just to make it a bit harder to deal with, so you have the option to get some more information from your opponent's hand or just use it as another body to ascend or really do whatever as well. So I think this is a good change. I do think this really hurts the card's competitive viability, but frankly, I don't think we really want to see a card like this competitively viable at this stage, or at least it's in its old effect. So we'll see if this card does get played. I'm a bit skeptical about that, but you never know. This is still a really neat card, and you never know when getting that information might be quite nice. Honestly, as a first turn play, yeah, I could see it still being really annoying to deal with as well. Moving on to Poison Tip Arrow. And Frix has a further updated effect, so I'm skipping over this one. Poison Tip Arrow and actually Shield of Achilles have very similar changes. So the Poison Tip Arrow changes, instead of only expending 1 spirit to destroy the Elestral, you now have to expend spirits equal to that Elestral's enchantment cost. And what that means is it doesn't matter what Elestral you're destroying, you always had to pay a 1 spirit premium for it, just its regular enchant, which I think is huge, as it's pretty much an indirect buff to all 2 and 3 spirit Elestrals, which they really, really do need. So pretty much less punishing, your opponent actually has to use more resources to get rid of them. Of course, you're still going to want to if you Poison Tip Arrow a big Elestral because you're getting rid of it, but I do definitely think it's not as oppressive at all. And Shield of Achilles, similar change. It's now 1 cost, but you have to expend X spirits where X is equal to the enchantment cost of the attacking Elestral. So pretty much does the same thing, but it has pretty much the same change as Poison Tip Arrow as well. So those two, I think that really reins those in. I don't think it hurts the cards at all. They're still phenomenal cards. I just think they feel more fair now by doing that. Shield of Achilles is really the one that's hardest hit by it, because before, with just 2 spirits, you could use 2 spirits from Elestrals or non-invoke encounter runes on the board to be able to use it. But now you can only do that for the 1, and you have to have spirits in your spirit deck to be able to expend, and you have to have them equal to whatever the attacking Elestral is. So that will come up. I don't think it will come up too often, but that does matter and will come up sometimes. So Shield of Achilles, I think, is a lot more noticeably worse than Poison Tip Arrow, because Poison Tip Arrow, you're used to having to expend spirits. But again, overall, I think these cards are still super playable. And at their base, against 1 Spirit Elestrals, they still do the exact same thing as well. So no real change there. And I still think the meta is going to focus around those 1 Spirit Elestrals, at least for set 1. So therefore, these cards, I don't really see much of an impact. Their impact being changed in that meta landscape, as they'll more or less do the same thing, other than Shield of Achilles now just needing 1 Spirit in the Spirit deck to be able to expend to deal with it. Overall, though, I think these are phenomenal changes. So skipping over aDrive because there's actually a rule clarification presented later on that I also want to discuss with this card. But the next card is Drops of Lead, notably going to 2 cost, and I think this is very much necessary. Drops at 1 is just a better mulligan, period. And still with 2, it's a better mulligan, but the fact that it's 1 and you get to choose what cards to send back, and you're really removing 1 card from that pool because you're getting rid of the drops, that is nuts. Just if you had it in your open hand, why mulligan? Because you can just use drops. Yeah, at 2 cost, it keeps it more in line. It's still a better mulligan, but now it's just because you're technically shuffling back in 1 less card, so you get to see 1 new card on top of it. Be able to choose which cards to shuffle back, which on a normal mulligan you cannot. So I do really like that change there. It makes it seem more balanced. I still think it has some use cases, but at 1, I feel like every deck just wanted to run it, because at any point you can just get a reload, just if you don't like your hand and such. And that's good for any deck. So now some decks probably will just want to run good cards so they don't need the reload instead of having to pay the 2 cost to be able to use it, which I do quite like with this card as well. So overall, I like this change. I still think it will be run, just not in every deck. It will take the right deck to be able to run it, which I think is perfectly fine. Rummagem here, notably going to 2 attack and 3 defense from a 4/4 stat line, and this is huge. I personally think one of the reasons why Rummagems run, but barely any other of the searchers are run, is not so much because it's an in-element searcher. That is still really good. It has a lot of inherent synergies, but I feel like we haven't really reaped the benefits of that yet. The reason I think it was more notable was because it just had a phenomenal stat line on top of a great value effect. Because that's the thing about running pretty much any other searcher in any other deck. It either just didn't really mesh with it, kind of like Smoltuga in a more aggro fire deck. Doesn't really match up, but also because sometimes the stat line's just kind of like, meh. So Rummagem there, I think going to a 2/3 is super crucial, so it doesn't have that inherent value of being a great body on board. Now it's just a really great consistency tool, and you have to put in a bit of extra effort to have an impact on the board, which I think is very important for this card. It's like either buff all the searchers so they have good stat lines, or bring Rummagem down. And again, this card's probably only going to get better as we keep seeing more and more 1 Spirit Earth Elestrals added to the pool. We already have some amazing ones, and we'll probably just see more synergies with the fact that it can search in element. That, again, just having a big body just meant that this card is going to be insane from here on out until stuff gets power creep. So I think this is very much a very good change, and Rummagem will still definitely see play for its effect. I don't think it needs the big stat line. It just makes it from an insane card to a good card. So really like that change there. So I'm going to skip over some of the wording updates to clarify, because it doesn't actually change how the card works. I'm just going to focus on the actual changes. So Krakatuga is the next one here in this message. Oops, not letting me highlight it. That's weird. Okay, anywho, the message where my mouse is, Krakatuga still has the same effect to expend 2 fire to force pretty much an eruption effect, but now it has the added bonus of whenever a player casts eruption, you can target and destroy a card on the field. It's not really too applicable that your opponent can also cast it, because Krakatuga will have to be enchanted with a fire spirit, so why would your opponent cast an eruption? It's just nice because now when you have your own eruptions, you get even more benefit off of it, which makes this card a really cool kind of top end to a water stall burn deck, or water fire stall burn deck that already has some precedence in the game. So I I really like that. I really do. Just being able to, I guess, in theory, just hold eruptions in your hand, go into Krakatuga, expend 2 fire, burn them for 3, eruption, burn them for 3 more, pop a card, eruption, burn them for 3 more, pop a card, maybe even eruption again, burn them for 3, pop a card. Really, with 2, you can just kind of deal with whatever Elestrals they have on board, maybe some back row that might slow you down, and you always have the bonus of being able to attack with Krakatuga to possibly finish off the game if all that burn hasn't done that yet. I really like this card. I think it definitely gives it a nice edge to close out the game in that sort of deck. Will the deck be meta? No. But I'll take any bonus to a really fun deck like that because I really love the idea of that deck and can't wait to see how it further evolves. I realized after I finished recording this video, I totally forgot to discuss Globby. So of course, this will be inserted where it needs to in the video, but if there's a weird break there, that's why. So Globby. Huge overhaul to the effect, where now, as long as it has 3 enchanting water spirits on it, it can ascend into Majesty, special ascend into Majesty from your hand or deck, and that's during your main phase. It's an activated ability. And that is notably different than it's just once per turn, refresh 2 water spirits from your underworld. So I'm a bit sad to see that effect go. I don't think it was amazing. It was certainly interesting, though, and I definitely saw people, mainly Rat King, just looping, getting out 2 Globbies and just recovering a ton, and it was quite amusing to watch. Painful to play against, but amusing to watch nonetheless. Just kind of fun, silly decks like that pop up, because those are really where some of the most hype moments lie, in my opinion. But this change here, I do think keeps it more in line with the other starter deck to Spirit Elestrals from the main Ascension lines, because all of them have a way to special enchant into their 3 Spirit Ascension form. So to me, this effect just makes a lot more sense than Globby's original effect. Does it make it better now? In the context of the starter deck for my starter deck review, yes, absolutely, because there's only 1 Majesty in there, so it's nice that you have Globby there. But really, how you were getting Majesty out anyway was you're using Poseidon to Nexus a spirit onto an Elestral and then ascend into Majesty anyway. So this doesn't really change that all too much. The only difference here is that your Majesty will now have 4 enchanting water spirits on it, so hit a bit harder, have more attack, deal more damage to the spirit deck. But that's about it from that combo there. So I don't know if it makes too much of a difference, that 1 extra spirit, because it's 1 extra attack, sure, 1 extra damage, as I've said, but at the same time, that's 1 extra spirit you can lose, and now you've kind of lost out on some of the recovery that Globby allowed you to get. So all in all, I don't know if this change really matters. I don't know if you just prefer to run 3 Majesty in your deck and because you still have to use Poseidon to do it. But theoretically, Globby has some more future potential if we get more ways to accelerate spirits onto Elestrals, which quite interesting if you ask me. So right now, don't think this effect really matters at all. But parents saying that. Oh, you can't see the message. Yeah, that message is Baron talking about Humbust hit there, which we'll get to that. That one's a funny one. I realized that you all haven't heard about it with this in this section of the video. But anyway, pretty much what I was trying to say was Globby. Don't know if this effect really changes much right now, but definitely has some more viability in the future, depending on what cards we get. Just because the only way to really get that 3rd water spirit on Globby right now is to Nexus with Poseidon. And what's the difference between just going Tadpuff effect, Nexus from Poseidon onto Tadpuff, ascend Tadpuff into Majesty from hand anyway. So we'll see. So next one I'm talking about is the Jolton buff here. And let's see, where is it? Oh, over here, sorry. Jolton, going to 4 attack, and that is so nice because Thunder needs that, will love every little extra attack buff that it can get. And the reason why, at least how I view it is, it's trying to be a control deck, and one of the best ways to control is just being able to attack over something, as tacky is the most efficient way to do so. So having Jolton at 4 attack is great. It's a great break point for the same reason Rummagem was a great break point for attack and had to be nerfed. Jolton just becomes even better. It can start hitting over some stuff, trading with some stuff. And the fact that it can search out a Stadium Rune, specifically in Thunder, means that this Jolton can make itself 5 attack, which is a phenomenal breakpoint to be at. So all in all, I really like this Jolton change. Makes it far more appealing. Just being able to search out your Stadium, buff up all your stuff, including the Jolton, have great immediate board impact, but also thinning your deck for 1 just seems great. And even outside of Thunder, just be able to search out whatever stadium you need. Right now, I don't think it's too relevant just because all of them are element buffs and it won't have an impact on Jolton right away outside of Mount Olympus. But in the future, as we get more varied stadiums and such that don't necessarily increase attack, or at least that's not why you're playing it, Jolton will still be really nice at the 4 attack mark, still be able to do something. So another great change there, in my opinion. So here is the notable aStrabbit change. So it is at 5 defense that was in the previous log, if you read over it, that I skipped over. But the other reason I want to talk about it was because of the change to look versus search. Before, anytime you would add a card to your hand by a card effect, you had to reveal it. But with this change, it is specifying that look and search are 2 separate things. If you have to search a card, you have to reveal it, such as Rummage Up, Sprouter, Jolton we just mentioned. You all have to search a specific card, so you have to reveal it to confirm to your opponent that you're adhering to the restrictions of that search, such as grabbing a stadium, artifact, or one spirit or Elestral from the examples I gave. Look, though, like aStrabbit, for example, you no longer have to reveal. And that is very notable here, as that makes aStrabbit even better, because whatever you add to your hand, since there really was no restriction to it, you don't need to confirm anything, but now it's private information. Because the big thing was, if you added like a counter rune off of aStrabbit, your opponent would know it's there. Or you grabbed an Ascension from there. Your opponent would know what it is and start trying to play around it. It just gave your opponent some information for them to modify their plays to better deal with it. But now, that's not the case. And between the 5 defense from aStrabbit, which 5 defense is notable, just look at Sprouter and Aramare, first turn enchants and defense. Sometimes your opponent can't get over it. It's actually really good. It's one of the harder ones to get over, as your opponent will always need another card, or Molstachian is the other answer. So I do quite like that change, but on top of just making its search effect even better, it is a really great value tool that I think between this card and Jolton just gives Thunder a much better base to work off of, a lot more powerful to kind of fuel this control strategy. I mean, just aStrabbit being able to grab you whatever your answer and then has a higher chance of surviving will always be great. And I do think it also has some potential in other decks that might want to just get that top research as well. So really, really do like this change in aStrabbit. aStrabbit went from a card that I wanted to be good, but knew it just had too little board impact and gave up too much information to be able to use, to I think the card that Dan really envisioned it being as well. So I love seeing it. Next note is that Charon's Obol is now 1 cost. This was what it was when Dan was opening the prototype boxes and we saw it first revealed, and it sounded insane. Not so much right now, just because we don't really have any ways to deal with wide boards or easily build wide boards. We have some ways, but it wasn't going to be the most prevalent in my opinion. So Charon's Obol has a use case, it just really wasn't being met in this sort of meta. But now, with it being, well, actually I should back up. It being 2 cost further kind of made you feel about it, especially right now, because what? Flip it up, your opponent just destroys the 1 Elestral and you draw 1 for 2. That's not that great. Now, 1 cost for 1, that's okay. It's a cycle, pretty good. And then if you can happen to get it when your opponent destroys 2, awesome. That, I really do like that subtle change there. And now it definitely has a lot of potential moving forward. And the reason why I don't think it's broken at 1 cost compared to something like Nog, because it technically has a higher ceiling, can draw you a ton of cards, really like, I just think of foamy floats and such. You can draw a ton of cards off of, you just keep floating off of foamy when your opponent attacks, and they have multiple attackers. But now the counterpoint to why I think it's fine at 1 cost as opposed to Nectar of the Gods is because your opponent has a chance to actually deal with it. They can destroy it. They can try to play around it if they think you have it by maybe not attacking or slowing down their attack, or maybe not attacking as much as they would to destroy stuff. Or even like you flip it up and your opponent's just like, okay, I'll just stop attacking. I don't want to give you more cards. You now have ways to, your opponent has ways to interact with it. And I think that's the most important thing. And because they have ways to interact with it, you want to make sure that its floor isn't too low either. And I think your opponent being able to like stop attacking so you can only get 1 card out of it for 1 cost is perfectly fine. And you will be a bit sad because you obviously want more value, but you also can't complain because you did get a new card to work with. So all in all, I do really like this change. I think this makes this card way more appealing and really kind of reins in the power of the draw power cards between Nectar, which I think has been pretty balanced since the beginning. Now Charon's Obol feeling a lot more playable and really stopping Drops of Lead from being just insanely playable. Here's the big change I wanted to talk about. This is the 3rd iteration I've seen of Emphyrix made public, and that's why I skipped over the other one, because it was one that I had actually mentioned before in the Discord, and I know it had been I'm assuming it had been a big talking point for Dan and his team, and he actually went with it, but I knew Dan wasn't really happy with it. And that's just because he really wanted Ampharix to be able to be enchanted with any spirit, but he also recognized that Ampharix in its previous form was just a bit too strong. Not right now. I think right now Ampharix was fine, but definitely in the future, it would be a pain in the butt to design cards around because you always have to think about Ampharix and how it impacts it no matter the element. So Dan actually opted for this change, which I really like. It is a huge nerf to Ampharix, but I think it keeps true of the card. And honestly, I still think decks will find ways to use it. It'll still be a fine card. And this change is just that now, when it's destroyed, its triggers now when it's destroyed in battle or by opponent's card effect, you can expend 1 fire, and during that end phase, you can special cast it. So it comes back, but now it's not as flexible. You can't choose which end phase or which opponent's end phase to use it on. And now it has to be properly enchanted when it first comes out, which to me also makes way more sense that Ampharix has to be properly enchanted to get this effect. So yeah, makes it harder to play in other elements, but I don't think it makes it too much harder. I think the big thing that really feels like a nerf here is just the fact that now you can't wait for it to be good. You kind of have to use it right when it's destroyed, which definitely reigns in the power level. But I have a feeling that we'll see over time that this is really important, that this change made sense, took place. I think if we left Ampharix being its flexible self, it would be super problematic if Ascension strategies ever became good, or even some Swarm strategies. So I do think this card has a place. It still can definitely be used for Ascension strategies. It definitely just needs to be better timed. It's going to be a bit more difficult to use, more skill intensive. And I think that's the best place for it to be. Well, also, I think really keeping the spirit of what Dan wanted the card to be, or at least my impression from what he has publicly said. So all in all, I am sad because Ampharix doesn't look playable in first set, but overall, I do actually come up liking this change. So the next 2 changes are for 2 of the 3 bears, and that's Earth Scout and Earthseer. So both of them now do not force you to enchant one of the bears in defense when their special cast condition is met, which is really nice. It's actually, I actually scrapped this video because I didn't like the way I presented it overall, but I was discussing kind of comparing Earth Scout and Earthseer to existing Elestrals, and one of the recommendations I made to make Earthseer feel a bit better was to have it be that it can enchant the thing in attack so it can immediately attack right away. So you have more what is the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word that I was trying to get at, so I'm just going to reword it. Pretty much I suggested that Earthseer should be able to enchant an attack. That way, whatever you flew into just has more offensive pressure. Like, it's lower power. It's a bit hard to hit over, especially some of the higher stuff. But if you can, you get a lot of offensive pressure from that, and just allowing it to be a bit more powerful in that respect. And it's funny that this actually happened here, and I do quite like that ability to be able to do so, get some more offensive pressure out there, to be able to swarm the board just a bit better, definitely gives these bears an edge. And I like that they didn't just say rework to enchant it in attack. It can now be either or, to be flexible depending on which bear you want to go into. So cool place you can go is like Earthseer attack over something, enchant an Earthseer if your opponent has another one, and attack over it, and then flow into something else. That's pretty cool. I do like that, but unfortunately, Earthseer has also received a nerf. And that is, it's no longer 4 attack, it is 3 attack, meaning it is substantially more difficult to hit over stuff. And that is very disappointing. Just because Earthseer is already having trouble attacking over stuff. It could crash pretty easily, but attacking over stuff? So just to see it down 3 attack, it's like, you're not really getting off that effect. Most of the time, you're having to put in way too much effort just to get it to attack over something, and forget going Earthseer into Earthseer to easily do stuff. Because now under Stadium, they'll just hit 4 attack, and then you're right back at what regular Earthseer did, and that was still not be able to easily attack over stuff as much as you'd like. So I definitely think in this first set, Earthseer, really the whole bear package wasn't looking that playable. And admittedly, now with these changes, while I like the change to the effects, the change to the attack only further hurts it and makes it hard to use that effect. So very sad about that. But it is important to mention that Dan has confirmed that there will be at least a card, if not more cards, supporting this bear archetype. Even teased that it might potentially be an Earth kind of archetype. That's what I was looking for. Archetype, since all of them start with Earths, and well, Majursa has Earths in it as well. So again, not confirmed. Dan at least kind of teased that he had already thought about that, but what is pretty much confirmed is that we will get more cards supporting this. And he said the whole reason he made this change to the attack is he's worried that these cards will be able to too easily swarm the board and overpower stuff if Earthseer was left at 4 attack. So I do hope we get some cards that buff up these attacks, but I do kind of get his point here, because ideally if we have some sort of like stadium or something that buffs up the bears to allow them to hit over stuff more easily, that is very nice. And what that means is now the opponent has a way to out it by destroying whatever card that is that buffs them, and they go back down in power. So it kind of gives the opponent another way to out them that wouldn't exist if Earthseer had naturally higher attack as well. So we'll just have to wait and see what those cards are before we determine how good these cards are in that context, because it really will just depend on the package of cards we get from set 2, whether or not these cards will feel better, because as they are now within the context of the element and individually, they're not that great. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they can't be great at some point in the future, because sometimes all it takes is one card and some amazing synergies, and cards that were originally unplayable all of a sudden are extremely playable. So final thing that has been confirmed as the change, other than the change in the card backs for some of the elemental symbols, and that is Humbust's ability, and it is hilarious. This is going to be a real quick one, but it's hilarious how this came about. So pretty much Humbust now reads, when a player casts a rune, an opponent must send the top 2 cards of their deck to the underworld. So pretty much the reason this arose was because Wirtz, Baron, and Moxie, fellow YouTubers in the Elestral space, came up with pretty much Commander, but for Elestrals as well, that they called a Tribune. And I'm sorry if I missed out on anyone else who helped with this. Those are just the 3 that I know of. But yeah, and they were testing out Humbust in it. And they went off of the wording that each opponent needs to mill the cards. And yeah, Dan looked at that, said, I don't want that, and now Humbust only can target a specific player from mill. So obviously in one-on-one, this won't matter. It's not a change for that. It's just more for potential formats in the future that are multiplayer. So I just think it's hilarious that Dan did that. But also nice that he's looking at fun community projects as well and making these changes to make sure the balance of the game overall holds true. And it also means that he's definitely interested in stuff like that, which pretty neat for me, in my opinion, for the future of the game. Sounds really neat. I was trying to say it sounds really neat to me. But yeah, great for the future of the game that Dan's paying attention to community formats as well, in my opinion. Quite nice there. That is all the confirmed changes thus far. I think he's moving away from card effect changes now, because he's also been discussing about set numbers and symbols on the card. So I think that I think that's it for the changes for set 1. I think everything's locked in place. But alas, I'm going to wait to release my base set review until official confirmation is out that no other cards are going to be changed, because I really want those videos to stand the test of time. I want them to be relevant when we actually get the official release of Elestrals next year. So, of course, look forward to that. And if you're wanting to check out that series, I would suggest subscribing and turn on the notification bell so you're notified when I upload those videos. But with that being said, though, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of these changes as well. Please comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of my points. I love the discussion on that point. And yeah, I think there's one other thing that I wanted to say, so let me think about that for a second. I remember what it was that I wanted to say. I just wanted to let you all know that I'm going to wait until all the images, updated images, are officially up on the Elestrals website before updating the card images here on the Google Drive. And that's just because time-wise, I'm very busy right now and still want to be putting out content, so I'd rather just wait and do this all at once than having to spend a bit of time each day just re-updating the same images as new effects and different differentiations come out. So for right now, please just hold on. I promise I'll get this up to date once we have all the official images, because I really want those as well. But also I wanted to say thank you so much for the growth I've been seeing on my channel over the past really week, 2 weeks. I think it's like 2 Fridays ago that I finally hit 100 subscribers, and it's just keeps on growing, and it really has not, I shouldn't say been surprising, but it's been very heartwarming to see. I think that's the better way to describe how I feel. It's very heartwarming because when I started making YouTube videos, I really wanted this to be an outlet for me to kind of express my thoughts and opinions on games, but also open up a dialogue between people who are also interested in this to just further discuss, because to me that's the most fun. And to see that so many of you are actually interested in this and it's having an impact is the best thing that I could see as well. So thank you so much for all that growth. It's been just amazing to see. I am so very thankful. I also think I forgot to say thank you to Dan in the video I posted about an hour ago about him letting me shouting out my YouTube channel on his stream last Friday, because some of you all showed up, or just letting me know in chat that you all subscribed, and that was really nice to see. So thank you for the opportunity, Dan, and thank you to everyone who subscribed. But enough of that rambling. Look forward to more content coming out real soon, including those base set reviews, because I am so excited to get those out to you all.